Side 1. Today is Tuesday, May 13th, 2003, and this is the beginning of an interview with Richard Halt at my home at 2415 North River Road, Marion, Indiana. Richard is 23 years old, having been born on March 17th, 1980. My name is Alexis Adsit, and I'll be the interviewer. Richard, could you please state for the record what war and branch of service you served in?
I served in the Air Force during Operation Noble Lamble, which was the Kosovo Liberation Campaign, and Operation Infinite Justice, which was Afghanistan and Taliban and stuff.
What was your rank?
E4, Senior Airman.
When you entered the military, were you drafted or did you enlist?
I enlisted.
Where were you living at the time?
Marion, Indiana.
Could you give a few basic reasons why you joined and why you chose the branch you served in?
I joined because I would have to pay for my schooling, which would have put me in a lot of debt, and I wasn't ready to go to college. Also, that's where I felt like God wanted me to be at the time.
Do you recall your first days in the service?
Yes.
What did those experiences feel like?
Pretty messed up, most of them. Comical.
Did anything early on significantly impact your future military career?
Yeah. I had a basic training instructor who one of his favorite pastimes was to walk around the dorm when we were cleaning or straightening up or learning or reading or something. He'd walk around with his cap gun and he pointed at somebody and he'd go bang and he'd shoot him and he'd say, "You're dead, fall down." And then the kid would lay there for like half an hour, 45 minutes sometimes, and the instructor would come back by. He'd look down at him and he'd go, "What does it feel like?" And the kid wouldn't really know what to say. Say, "Were you ready to die?" And of course the answer was always no. So he just wasted like half an hour of time he could have been using to prep his wall locker or something. So he'd get back up and go about his business, but it made you think about stuff. There's a lot of instructors that didn't do that.
Tell me about your boot camp or training experiences.
I got probably the easiest job in the entire dorm. My job was like bed lining, which only had to be done once a day when you woke up, because when you went to bed, I mean, you're going to mess them up anyway. So I'd line all the beds in the morning, which left me free to just wander around and crack jokes most of the time. So one of the guys that I came with from Indiana, he's from Fort Wayne, got to be latrine queen, which is like he's in charge of the latrine and keeping that clean. So I went in and I helped him, and we probably cracked jokes for maybe 6 hours a day. And we'd just be in there cleaning. Like once we got the buffer out and we put a bunch of Tide down on the floor and we buffed the floor so that we could get the grouting really white. Of course, neither of us knew how to use a buffer. And turn it on. First thing that happened was I lost my grip because it spun around real quick and it slammed into the tiling down by the floor, and it cracked. This just shattered one of these tiles. And we're both all pretty upset because the TI is going to see that. We're going to be in a lot of trouble, and next thing you know, we're going to, we'll get washed back or something. We'd have to redo weeks, and no one wants to do that. But he never saw it. I guess he just wasn't ever looking. So I think we took pictures of it before we left.
Do you remember your instructors?
Yes. Senior Airman Gurley. That's his name.
Anything about him that you'd like to explain?
He was not a typical instructor. You could look at him next to other instructors and know that it's like he liked doing it so much that it was kind of hard for him to be yelling at you. Well, it wasn't hard for him to be yelling at you, but it was hard. It's hard for him to be yelling at you and for you to know that it was personal.
Did you have a problem getting through it?
No, no, I adjusted pretty well to it.
Which war did you serve in?
I served in Yugoslavia, the Kosovo Liberation, and then I served also in Infinite Justice, which I think the president changed the name to because Muslims didn't like it. But that was Afghanistan.
You mentioned many places, large and small, in your biographical information. So where exactly did you go?
Be easier to ask me where didn't I go. I was in Africa, Asia, all over Asia and Europe. North America, we did a lot of training exercises and stuff also. Only place I didn't get to was Australia and South America, which we don't really do much in South America, but Australia would have been nice.
Do you remember what it was like when you first arrived at those places?
Mm-hmm.
How did you feel?
England was cold and wet, and there was snow on the ground, and I had been told for like maybe 2-3 months before I ever left from basic training. I was talking to like people at my next base. It's like, oh no, it never snows in England. It never snows in England. It's wet and it's cold, but it never snows. So I fly in and I step off the plane and there's snow all over the ground, and I'm going, this is messed up. And I kind of knew that that was going to be not exactly um, your usual stationing in a country. It's just, yeah.
Were there any particular stories you'd like to share regarding the different locations that you had a chance to experience while you were in the service?
Huh. There's always one guy at my shop that I just latch on to. We'll bond. And in England, it was Thomas Valenzuela. And me and this guy, we would just chum around, and we were life support at the time. So we got to do survival training and stuff. And England, Lakenheath is like one big rabbit warren. They're all over the place, but you can't do anything to them because all the animals on bases are protected. So you can't chase them down, you can't shoot at them, you can't capture them. So me and Tom, we'd go out in the back and we'd make snares because we had learned how to do that with like our survival pamphlets. We'd open up these pamphlets and we'd look at them and we'd put them into practice and we'd snare these warrens. And I think we set maybe 20 or 30 of those, and we watched them over like 3 or 4 months, and we never caught a single rabbit. Never. And they're all over the place. I mean, you could walk up to them, pick them up, and carry them away. They're that friendly. Never caught one.
What was your job or assignment?
I was aircrew life support, which is like a squire for pilots. I take care of flight gear. We do a lot of training courses, water survival, combat survival, land survival, a lot of survival courses. Also, about half the job was chemical, nuclear, biological decontamination, so we trained a lot for that too.
Were there any specific tasks related to your duties that you could describe?
We maintained night vision goggles, which was always fun. It was a lot of time. You had to put a lot of time into these things because you'd calibrate them. Like every two months, these things were getting calibrated, and every night you were post-flighting them, which is almost a complete calibration. And it was time consuming, but there were payoffs because we'd go camping and we'd like sign out night vision goggles from the shop, and they would be we'd term it as a training exercise, and we'd take them out in the woods with us camping. We'd just be walking around with them at night and using them, and so there were perks to it.
Did you see or experience combat?
Yes.
Did you see or experience it?
Yeah, I saw and experienced it.
Were there many, if any, casualties in your unit?
Um, at my first squadron, we lost two planes, two pilots. They flew themselves into a mountain. Um, and then at my second squadron, we were a heavier unit. We were flying 130s, which has like 5 or 6 people on the air crew, and they flew up a mountain. They weren't really touching it, but they kind of hit it, bounced off, and then landed. It was weird. I wish I could have had a video of it. Because they hit the mountain, bounced off, pulled back down, landed, and they were stuck up there. And one guy he was really hurt. The Benson tank, which is like internal fuel reserve, this holds like 5,000 gallons or something of fuel, broke loose and slid back and like crushed him in between the wall and the tank. And so he had cranial hemorrhaging and a couple broken ribs, and they didn't think he was going to walk again. But he recovered. We were pretty fortunate. Most of the squadrons that I was with were pretty fortunate. Um,
Could you tell me about a couple of your most memorable experiences?
I'm fond of Czech Republic. We did an air show in Czech Republic, and normal deployments are not much fun when you're working because there's so much work involved. You're there for training or you're there for um, like actual flight operations. But in Czech Republic, we took 2 planes there for an air show, which is a big air show. They had like an international air show in the Czech Republic, and we're sitting there with our 2 F-15s, and one of them was a 2-seater because they took it specifically to fly um, their commander and vice commander of their Air Force, because McDonnell Douglas was trying to sell planes to them. So like Lockheed was there and Boeing was there, and everyone's trying to sell them their fighter because these people are trying to upgrade their Air Force. So Boeing, we fly in F-15s. Boeing asked if we could go, and we finagled our way into it. That's the way we did a lot of stuff. And we're flying this guy, and I have to fit him up to equipment, and this man's been flying for like 50 years. And he's telling me that his equipment's fit wrong. And I'm going, no, it's not. Look, I've been doing this for a while, and this is my equipment, and you fly in it, but I maintain it. And he's like, no, too tight. It's like, okay. So I loosen up, and then I tighten it down again. He's like, no, too tight. And he was on time restraint. Finally, my boss just said, just leave it loose. That's like a colonel. Just leave it loose. I'm like, okay. So he left, and I tightened everything down without him wearing it, and I tied it all off, and I took it out there to him, and he had a good time. But the people there were just so friendly. It was a lot of places that you go, they don't like Americans because we're arrogant. We're arrogant, and we swagger, and we're prideful, and we look down on them. They just don't like them.
Were you awarded any medals or citations?
Quite a few. The first 3 or 4 I was all happy for because you're fresh out of basic training. When you're wearing your blues, you don't have any medals except for like a basic training ribbon or maybe like marksmanship or something. Then you start getting medals, and now you're happy because you've got a row or you got 2 rows. And after you get about 2 rows, I just stopped caring and keeping track. Like I'd go to if I ever had to get dressed up in blues for like a tattoo or some type of awards banquet or something, I would go to my orderly room and I'd ask for a decorations rip. And every time I'd do that, I'd look at it and I'd go, I have that one, and I'd have to go to the store and I'd have to buy a couple more. So, but I was pretty decorated. I guess the people that I was working for were happy with what I was doing because I finished with like 4 or 5 rows of ribbons, and I still don't think I have all of them that I'm supposed to.
What was life like in the service?
Uh, Strict. Not so much so that you can't easily deal with it, but it was strict. Even when you're walking around off duty, there's a lot of things that you would do as a civilian you wouldn't think twice about. But just normal stuff, which might be legal, it's still permissible, but in the military they have like a higher standard of rules and regulations. And so you get into something, you say, wait a second, would I get in trouble for this? And you look at it and you kind of try to gauge your commander, and a lot of times you got to admit, yeah, he probably would jump on me for doing this, so you wouldn't be able to do it. Most civilians don't understand that it's not just you putting your life on the line in the combat zone. It's not you volunteering to fight for them. It's you volunteering to change your lifestyle. And they live with maybe a third less of the freedoms and the rights that Americans flaunt so much in doing what they're doing, getting paid less than what American businessmen would be getting paid, living with less of the freedoms. Um, but it was good. For me, it was good. I really enjoyed it.
Were you ever at the front lines or under fire? And if so, what was that experience like?
Oh, I was at the front lines a couple times, briefly. We were under fire a few times. That was just a fluke, though. Um, we'd fly into a base because we'd have to airlift in supplies or something. The last 2 years I spent in a special operations squadron. And so we'd airlift in supplies to these really messed up places like Kandahar and Afghanistan. Um, you'd fly in at night and everyone would be all NBG'd up, and there might be like tracers coming in and going out, and you'd fly in, like we'd fly in just to be in country. We'd go in for we'd create a reason like training or something just to be in country, just to experience part of it. Once my commander looked at me and he said, "Do we have supplies back in Uzbekistan?" And this is when we had moved from Uzbekistan to Pakistan. I said, "No, I don't think so. I think we brought them all with us." So I got a message. I heard about a pallet of life support equipment up in Uzbekistan, and no one seems to know whose it is. So get your stuff together and get on the plane. And the plane was leaving in like 10 minutes. Get your stuff together, get on the plane, fly up there, put eyes on it, see if we can't take it. And he meant even if it wasn't ours, get your hands on it, load it on the plane, and get it out of there. So I did, and it was really cold up north. And I looked around out in the dark for like 4 hours. This is at night, like 4 hours. I'm looking through, I'm sniffling, I'm cold, I'm like looking through pallets, this big open field of just supplies and stuff, and I'm looking for anything that I could possibly load back on that plane and take back with me, and I didn't find anything that, well, I mean, we had people all over the base looking for this thing, and no one had a clue what anyone was talking about. So on the way back, though, we had to fly through Afghanistan to get there, and then we had to fly through Afghanistan again to get back. And we hit like the main reason for that flight was to go drop like a pallet of barbed wire, sea wire. It's like this big pallet of just stacks of wire, and that's all we flew in there, like this big pallet of wire. And that was pretty hairy. We hit the ground, engines running, and people running around shouting and shooting and stuff. And we're like dropping off this pallet and pushed it off the plane, and they pull up this forklift, and we were gone. So aside from like scattered instances like that, um, I was sleeping one afternoon, and in the background I heard this. There was like 4 or 5 just big booms, like big just booms, and everything's shaking and stuff. And this is in Pakistan, and it's supposed to be a relatively secure area. So I hop out of my tent, and I'm like walking around with my M16, and I got my boots on, my shorts. I'm like bare-chested, walking around with this M16 slung over my shoulder, and got like an extra magazine in one hand, and I'm just walking around, looking around, going, "Hey, what's going on?" And like a couple more come in, and a couple more explosions, some craters are forming. They're like, get down, people are shooting at us." And that didn't last very long. Pakistanis are they're pretty strict when they want to be. So they managed to chase the people off. But some guy had been like firing at us with a 107mm rocket, and that's a big rocket. And it was making some pretty nice holes. And I was just mad because I couldn't really shoot back at him. So no one had a clue where it was coming. It's coming from like over a hill. I couldn't shoot back at him. Everyone's like, get down. I was figuring, I get shot if I get shot. Yeah. But I was just mad they woke me up, really.
How did you stay in touch with your family, and how much time did you spend doing this?
Email, letters, and phone calls. Letters, I don't like writing letters. It gets too... If I can't communicate them with any other way, then I will, but it'll take like a month to get a letter home sometimes. And they'd get them home pretty quick, but getting stuff back. And by the time you finish both sides of the cycle, it'd be like a month before you got mail. So for the first month, you're not getting any mail. And then when you get back from your deployment, you're getting mail from like a month ago, being routed like halfway across the world. Find out you're not there and routed halfway back. So I'd rather just do email and phone calls. Which email's kind of hard to monitor, and phone calls you didn't get too many of those. You might get like one a week or something. So between those, I spent probably um, maybe 20, 25 minutes a week or something communicating with my family.
What was food like, and did you have many chances to experience local cuisines of regions that you were stationed in?
When we weren't at war, I had all kinds of chances to experience local cuisine. Um, like good food, like Italy, best eating I've ever done. Sitting in Italy, like a four-star hotel, getting paid $70 a day to look at beautiful women and eat food, and that was fun. But when you're at war, when you're deployed, we're eating out of MREs, meals ready to eat, like meals rejected by Ethiopians. I mean, these things are nasty. And for the first week, it's a novelty to you, and you're eating like, oh man, I could do this, and yeah, it's no problem. So you're eating about two a day, and then after about a month, you lose your appetite, and you're all skinny, like everybody on that deployment. I mean, guys coming back having lost like 30 pounds. They were hefty people. I mean, they weren't like little Ethiopians running around or anything, but then you drop back to one, sometimes one a day, and sometimes you just wouldn't eat at all because you just didn't feel like eating. And they're high enough nutrition value that you can get by with one, less than one a day, and still be okay. Just you get tired of eating them. I mean, you might as well have mixed up like this uh, nutrient smoothie and like no flavor, just drink it and there you go, like little George Jetson pills or something.
Did you have plenty of supplies?
When the military's not at war, there are no supplies. It's like pulling teeth trying to get your hands on the stuff you need to do your job. When we're at war, you buy absolutely everything you possibly can, even if you don't need it, but you might need it in the future. And you buy and you buy and you buy and you buy. And probably once a week, we'd send home a plane full of supplies that we had bought and procured in the Middle East back to the States to restock the base in the States. And we'd stockpile supplies, and you're not supposed to do that, but we'd stockpile supplies. We'd get our hands on all kinds of stuff. We'd get like $20,000 to buy equipment, like a money is set aside, and we'd procure $20,000 to buy equipment. So they'd buy like a Gator, which is like a six-wheel little garden tractor thing that you drive around just, I guess, to have one. We got like TVs, we got DVD players, we airlifted in refrigerators, pallets of Coke. Once a week we were eating steak and lobster, like barbecue and steak and lobster in the Middle East, in the Middle East, and like cultures that pork is like bad and like beef is bad, and we're just sitting there frying up big chunks of red meat and pallets of beer, and yeah, and then you got your hands on all kinds of equipment. 110 degrees and you were getting winter gear just simply because you can get your hands on it. And so you'd get like 3 or 4 outfits of winter clothes like coats and Gore-Tex and stuff, and then you pack it up in a bag and send it home on the airplane because they'd rotate airplanes in all the time. And then you'd have stuff like waiting for you back at base that you had gotten your hands on. You send it home. I'd walk into places and we try to work out deals with other people. There's a lot of bartering going on. It's like, hey, you do this for me, we'll do that. So one guy in the supply, we took him out to our aircraft, and we took pictures of him. He was in his flight suit and all gung ho. And look, Mom, I'm in the seat of the pilot seat, and I'm flying an aircraft. And we took pictures, and it was a good time for him. So when he got back, he's like, yeah, if you ever need anything, just let me know. And he's supply, and they have everything. So we just go over there perusing through their stuff at night, and we take home like pallets and pallets of this stuff because there's no accountability for it, which is the way I think it should be. When you're at war, give them as much money as possible to get the things that they need, that they should have had before the war started, to do their job. And things work so much more smoothly at war.
Did you feel a lot of pressure or stress?
I didn't feel it. I deal with pressure and stress pretty good. I don't really feel it. I woke up one morning and my back was so messed up that I couldn't even straighten up. It hurt that bad, and I hadn't done any lifting the day before. I hadn't really been doing anything strenuous as far as like hauling stuff around. Just I could not figure out why my back was so hurt. And I got talking to like medical people, and they're like, "There's nothing wrong with your back. Your back's fine. Um, maybe you ought to try to get some rest. Maybe you ought to try to take some time off." And I've been working like 16 hours a day. You work 16, 20 hours a day, and you'd sleep when you got the chance. You take naps throughout the day, and that's telling on you. And I'm surprised there weren't many people getting sick, but stress had just, I mean, it just wrenched up my back, and for like 3 days, I was pretty hurting. And then it kind of cleared up, and I don't know, I don't know what I did to relieve it, but yeah, yeah, there were times. I've since I've been in the military, um, almost from day one in the military, when I sleep, I've started clenching my teeth. So I'm like grinding down like my canines and stuff, and most of my teeth are kind of flat in the back. Yeah, it's really high stress because if you don't do your job right, if you mess up, it's not your boss coming to you reprimanding you. It's not him. Oh, that's wrong. That's messed up. We're gonna dock you pay. No, it's him going, sign this paper. Give me those stripes. We're taking away pay, and you're spending time in jail. That's messing up in the military, and that's hard to live under.
Is there anything that you did special for good luck?
I did lots of praying, and I don't know. It wasn't so much good luck, but it was fun. But I had this 12-inch GI Joe that my people in my shop sent me first time I went off to war, and I just carried it with me since then. And when I got back the first time, I started buying outfits and little guns and weaponry and stuff for him. So by the time I went the next time, he had like desert camos and body armor and helmets and all kinds of weaponry and stuff. And he became a permanent fixture in the shop. And my air crew would walk in and they'd be getting their equipment. They'd be looking around for Combat Halt. That's what they called him, little Combat Halt. And he'd be doing any number of things from waving an American flag to there's some days where he was just laying back, and every time he came in, he's in a different pose. I ended up making an Osama bin Laden doll, and Combat Halt was like pile driving him a lot and throwing him around, and like he was choking him and stuff. And that it was just a good time.
Moving on from there, how did people entertain themselves?
We entertained ourselves in a lot of ways. Uh, we made an NCO club sitting in the middle of the Russian steppes in like Uzbekistan. We made an NCO club. We scrounged up plywood, tarps, got our hands on coffee makers, all kinds of gourmet coffees and candies and stuff. And this is like Air Force land sitting in the middle of 10th Mountain Division, which is like big army. So for this one hangar is Air Force land, and life is good. We have like an outdoor theater. They hated that because they'd be digging holes and we'd be watching Forrest Gump and like surround sound speakers and stuff. And um, we'd steal like pans of, we'd procure pans of sheet cake from like the mess and stuff, and that would be our coffee cake. And yeah, we found a lot of ways to entertain. We started playing an Air Force Army football game on Saturday and Sunday. We'd play Air Force Army football, and we beat them like 4 times in a row. We beat them so bad the last time that the Army base commander banned football. Like we weren't allowed to play anymore because they were always losing.
Were there entertainers?
Um, okay, the military says they have entertainers running around, and Hollywood's all about going out and entertaining the troops, and then they pat themselves on the back and they go home. But they don't entertain the troops anywhere that the troops need to be entertained. I think Britney Spears went to Incirlik, Turkey, which has been an established base since Desert Storm, and there's no one shooting at them, and security's real tight and the food's great. It's like one of the best chow halls I've ever eaten in. And she's there and she's dancing around, throwing her bits and pieces around and doing her thing. And all the guys there are like cheering while we're sitting in the field living in mud and eating MREs and reading about her entertaining the troops in Turkey. Drew Carey came through where we were at in Pakistan, and I got a lot of respect for that guy because that was a pretty messed. I mean, we were getting shot at and stuff, and he just flew in with like Bruce Springsteen, and they did a concert, and that was a good time. So some of them, the the really good entertainers will go there. I know why people love Bob Hope because he'd go where the troops were at, you know. Um,
What did you do when on leave?
I did a lot of nothing when I was on leave. When I was on leave, I wouldn't commit myself to anything. I wouldn't fill up my schedule with appointments and stuff. If I wanted to do something, I'd do it. If I didn't want to do something, I wouldn't do it. If I wanted to sleep 14, 16 hours a day, I'd sleep 14, 16 hours a day. That's the stuff that I did on leave. If I wanted to spend, like I'd go shopping, and just for no other reason than I had money sitting there, I'd spend 8,000, 1,200 bucks a day or something just buying stuff. Um,
What did you do with any free time that you had during the day or in the evenings?
where? Just anywhere? In England, I spent a lot of time on the internet, and then we did a lot of traveling as well. At war, you don't have much free time, of any. In Florida, I'd watch a lot of movies. I'd get off base as much as possible. I'd be away from base. Just some nights I'd drive. I would drive for 500 miles Friday night. Get that far away from base. Be as far away from base as what I can um, legally, as far as like base rules are allowed, and just get a hotel and just be away from that environment.
Were there any particular places that you traveled to while you were there, like on vacation, that you recall?
I never had a desire to travel much because the military sent me so many places that by the time I could throw together a trip to France, I would have already been there. So I probably traveled more in the U.S. when I was stationed in the U.S. than I did on my own time overseas.
Do you recall any particularly humorous or unusual events?
Yeah, yeah, I do. We're sitting in Pakistan, and we generated a mission for ourselves so that we could get our plane over to a base in the Middle East because Pakistan is an alcohol-free country. And we'd get a plane to the Middle East for something that we've created. And there's justification for it. So we would have flown this multi-million-dollar aircraft, spent thousands of dollars on fuel to get it over to the Middle East just to buy a pallet of beer. And we'd load it up on the plane, they'd fly it back. And then when the plane got back, usually they'd have steak and lobster and stuff, and then they'd have a big barbecue. And this is a dry base. And so all the officers all the big officers would pretend like they didn't see it. And here'd be all these men just getting sloshed. And I didn't drink. You know, I still don't drink. But I was sitting at work once, and I was finishing up something that I was doing, and I spent a lot of time there because they'd alert all the time. And one of my aircrew came in, and he kind of tripped his way through the door. And I looked at him and I go, "You all right?" And he just smiles, this big, goofy smile. And he kind of stumbles his way over to me, and he almost fell, but he reached out and grabbed my shoulder, and he propped himself back up. I go, "You a little drunk?" And he's smiling as wide as I've ever seen anyone smile. And this is just this guy is it's not typical for him because he's usually so laid back and just serene, and he's big smile, teeth and everything, and he goes, "Exactly, exactly," just like that. And I'm kind of, okay, you're out of it, and I'm just going to sit here and wait for you to go away. And he starts rubbing my shoulders. and he's digging it. I mean, this is like a painful back rub. I mean, I'm cringing and kind of buckling underneath him, and I go, thanks, man. And he goes, exactly, exactly. And he turns around, and he stumbles out the door, and he almost falls, like knocks himself down with the door, and gets back up, and stumbling around, and he walks off. And that really wasn't that uncommon for the stuff that would go on, because we would work hard, and we'd work like 20 hours a day, and we'd get 3 or 4 hours of sleep a night, and then we would play really hard, and they would just barbecue and party and get drunk out of their and pass out, and everyone would pass out for like 20 hours. When they gave us a down day, everyone would drink for like 6 hours and then pass out for 18 or 20. Yeah.
What were some of the pranks that you or others would pull?
We got into prank wars a lot in our shop. And I'm pretty creative, and I was single, which meant I had a lot of money that I wasn't doing anything with. Got into this prank war one day. A girl took my hat, and you can't walk around anywhere on base without a hat. You get in trouble. You need to have a hat on your head. And if you don't have a hat on your head, you get yelled at by every single officer you pass getting back to your dorm until you can get out of uniform. Well, this girl stole my hat. I didn't have an extra hat, because I had taken my Gore-Tex home, and I usually had an extra hat in that, but so I got mad at her. I'm like, give me back my hat or I'm going to mess you up. Give me back my hat or I'm going to mess you up. She wouldn't give it back. So I stole her shirt when she wasn't looking, and I vacuum packed it. We had a big vacuum packer. I vacuum packed it inside this bag, and it's like these clear plastic bags. And then I took that and I stuffed it inside another clear plastic bag, and I filled it with water and baby powder. And then I vacuum packed that over top of it. So it looked like I had vacuum packed her shirt inside of like this nasty water baking baby powder stuff. She was mad. She was like crying and stuff. I said, you should have given me back my hat. And I wouldn't have ruined her shirt. I mean, I didn't want to mess up her personal property. So she goes outside and she's like opening it up, and she discovers that her shirt was okay, that everyone was laughing at her. But because everyone was laughing at her, she didn't give me back my hat. She left. She went home, and I'm stuck there at work without a hat, looking around all over the place, and she had taken it with her. Luckily, I had a change of like civilian clothes with me. I got so mad. I drove to Walmart, and I got all kinds of stuff. I spent like an hour there just buying stuff, and I rigged this battery, like 3 or 4 cans of silly string to the back of her locker, and I spent all night. I left work at like 2 o'clock in the morning, so that's how long I spent working on this, and I set it up on her locker so that when she opened the locker, she'd get hosed down with the silly string. But yeah, we got carried away with pranks. I mean, they went on all over. It didn't matter where you were at. They'd go on all over the place. I took a picture of some guy with a digital camera while we were at war, and I got on the internet and I downloaded pictures of like Britney Spears, and I cut it all out, and I spent like maybe 3 days working on this, and stuck him like right next to Britney. He had his arm around her and everything's like nuzzling up against her neck and stuff. I mean, it looked pretty good, and I just posted up all over the place. One of my bosses once got like a fighter pilot ride, and he took a bunch of pictures of himself, and he was all proud of those. So I took that and I like gave him a massive fro. Like his fro was like 8 times bigger than his head, and I posted those pictures all over the place, and just stuff like that. Is you substitute humor for a lot of the stuff that you miss out on.
What did you think of officers or fellow soldiers?
This is how officers go. First lieutenant, second lieutenant, captain, great men. I mean, they'll hang out with you, they'll chum around, they'll just be happy-go-lucky with you. Majors are different. Majors are just not very cool at all. I could say a lot of messed up stuff about majors because they're all bucking for their colonel. They want like colonel. They want their bird. And so a lot of lieutenant colonels too are kind of they push a lot of stuff, and they get you working pretty hard because they're all looking for their colonel. And then there's some colonels, it's about 50-50. Some are laid back and really cool, and some are pushing for their star. And it depends on what the guy's like, where he wants to stop. But usually most generals are really good people because they're more of a PR type job. Their job is to make people look favorably on the Air Force. Because they don't do anything when they're not at war. Most of the organization, most of the running of the Air Force is done at the NCO level. Officers do very, very little functional stuff if we're not at war.
Did you keep a personal diary, and if you did, how often did you reflect upon it?
I didn't keep a personal diary. There were really only, I think back in World War II, Vietnam, there were a lot of guys that were keeping personal diaries and stuff, maybe Korea, but most guys, I think I knew maybe 2 or 3 men out of like 300 or 400 that were keeping diaries. I took a lot of pictures, but I like to remember this stuff on my own.
Do you recall learning of the World Trade Center attack on September 11th?
We were at work. I was stationed in Florida at that time, and we always have CNN or like Fox News on because that, one, it's justifiable to have that running because it's like news, current events and stuff, and two, you like to keep up to date on stuff that's going on. But the first plane slammed into the tower, and then all the news stations started showing this live feed of like this burning building. And my boss is sitting there going, "Hey, Halt, take a look at this. Some dumb mahucker just flew a plane into a building." And I go over there, I'm looking at it, and it's all smoking and stuff. And I'm thinking, man, what an idiot. It's a clear day. How do you miss a skyscraper? Oh man, just jumped out at me. Next thing you know, you're slammed into it. No, I mean, you see them. They're there. It's a big structure. So we watched that for about 5 minutes, and we see like the live feed of the second aircraft slamming into the second building and knifes through and all these flames and stuff, and we're silent. Everybody there's like 8 of us watching this, and everybody's just awestruck. And we got so little work done that day because we were watching that so much. And maybe an hour later, that other plane hit the Pentagon. And then there was like bomb threats in Washington and people saying like car bombs. And the entire time this is going on, I'm thinking, what on earth is going on here? And my boss looks at me and he says, start looking over the mobility kit. When you get home tonight, start packing. And we always kept stuff packed anyway. You keep like a basic bag packed. So it was supposed to be within about an hour you can go home. You can grab your bag. You can finish up whatever financial stuff you had. And you could be gone in an hour. So 4 days after that, we were gone. And we were on our way over.
How did it affect your daily duties? What did you do once you were deployed?
There's about 4 weeks prior to and shortly thereafter a deployment in which everybody is doing 3 or 4 times more work than they usually do. And you're getting stuff together and you're putting these kits together and you're building just things you might need. And all kinds of scenarios are popping into your head and you're planning for them ahead of time. And then you get to war, and there's about 2 weeks that when you hit the ground, you're building and you're setting stuff up. And the first day you're there, everything's set up as a squadron. You can function, you can work, you can do your job, and then you're just building. And then after about 2 weeks, everything's more or less comfortable for you. And then it all gets laid back again. You do what your tasking is. You fly. So you fly like 3 flights or something in a day, and you're there and you put the planes up, and then you wait for them to come down. Maybe 8 hours later they'll come back down, and then you do your post-flight stuff, and you make sure there aren't any problems with your gear, and then you catch yourself like 4 to 6 hours of sleep.
How were you personally affected by it?
I've gotten a lot of self-confidence from the military and the experiences that I've had. It's gotten to the point where I can get pulled over by like a police officer for doing something that I know was wrong, like speeding. Like, I know I was grossly speeding, and he could come up, and my heart's not beating fast, and my adrenaline's not pumping, and I'm just looking at him, and usually my first response is, "What's up?" Not, "Yes, officer, what can I do, sir? What happened, sir? What's going on, sir?" It's, "What's up?" And then he'll tell you stuff, and I'm just sitting there joking with him, talking with him, and I'm just I'm that confident of myself that I'm not easily intimidated by something like that. Um, I think I'm probably a little bit more paranoid now than what I was. Like, I sleep with a gun beside my bed, and uh, I don't feel as safe around home as what I did when I was on base or in the military or even in a combat zone. So,
From your standpoint, who was the war you served in wage against?
people picking on people who couldn't defend themselves. Both of them. I think that's what it comes down to. It comes down to like the big men picking on the small men when there are bigger men standing right behind them asking them what they're doing. It's like, well, I'm picking on this little guy. So you're killing innocent people. So you're out there raping women and burning houses and making people afraid. And that's not right. Any way you look at it, that's not right.
Do your feelings considering the prospect of war match up with the actions taken by the United States?
Yeah, I'm always for war. When you have to go to war, you go to war. And when you go to war, you fight. And don't tie my hands. Don't tell me what I can't do. You're telling me to go kill this man. I'm going to kill him. If I feel like I need to kill him by stabbing him 7 or 8 times, and you're saying that's inhumane, no, that doesn't factor in. What factors in is you're telling me to go kill another man, and that's messed up. So you let me do my job because I don't want to do it. You're telling me to do it. I feel like once Congress says go to war, all the politicians should back up, step in line behind the military people, and keep their noses out of it.
Do you feel that the enemy was defeated and that the country accomplished what it set out to do?
I think that we dealt with the immediate problems. Um, the U.S. is a relatively happy place. I don't see how a person can live in the U.S. and be unhappy. I just don't understand it. There's a lot of countries out there where they don't have the stuff that we do. They don't have the opportunities that we do. Um, and that fosters a lot of resentment. So you deal with them as they come. And we dealt with what we could. What's there to deal with right now. I'm sure that we'll have to deal with more in the future.
Do you recall the day that your service ended?
Yes. Um, I was just relieved, really relieved. I signed up for 4 years, and they kept me for about 4 1/3, almost 4 months extra. And about 8 months of my last year in service was spent deployed to combat zones. So I was relieved. When I got home, I didn't really know what to do. I went from a life of regimen to a life where I wasn't obligated to do anything, and that took a little while to get reacclimated to.
Where were you when you found out that you were done?
I was back in the States. They had us stop lost for a while, which means even if your enlistment was up, you couldn't get out. And even though I wasn't sure whether I could get out or not, I was out processing. I was doing, like, taking care of accounts that I had with other government agencies, other organizations that were on base, and getting my records and doing my medical appointments and dental and stuff so that on the off chance that they would let me out and I can leave. And I happened to fall, by the time I finished that up, I happened to fall. There was like maybe a week and a half window where they lifted stop loss and they started letting people out again. This was before I think President Bush was making it known that he was going to be walking into Iraq if they didn't straighten up. And so once they found out that there was prospect of them having to go back to war, then they stopped stop loss. So about the third or fourth day of that week and a half, I was out. I had finished my out processing and I left. So I was pretty fortunate. I wouldn't have minded doing another couple months, another 6 months or so, maybe another year. But anything after that, I think I would have been a little unhappy doing. Not because I didn't want to do it, not because I didn't want to fight, but because I had already given them about 4.5 years. And then I would have given them another year on top of that. Maybe 2 years on top of what my original commitment was. And I understand the necessity for me to be there, and I was good at my job, and they didn't have to worry about me, but I wanted to get on with my own life.
Did you work or go back to school?
Yes, and yes. I worked, and I'll be starting school in the fall.
Will your education be supported by the GI Bill?
Yes, it will.
Did you make any close friendships while you were in the service?
Made a lot of close friendships. My phone bill's kind of steep. I keep in contact with people like I've got a friend in California. I've got a couple friends in Florida. I've got a friend that lives like in Minnesota. You know, they're pretty far away, but I keep in contact with them.
Do you plan on keeping in contact with them for a while?
Yes.
Did you join or have you considered joining a veterans organization?
I had thought about it when I got back, but I might have to wait until more young people get out and think about doing it. It's just most veterans organizations are, I don't have a problem with the older people, but they're like World War II, Korea, Vietnam vets, and there's a pretty big age gap there. I'm not sure if I'd feel comfortable being around that.
What do you plan on doing for a career now that your military service has ended?
I'm going to be a radiologist, and I hope to do that only so long as it takes me to get a book published, and then at that point I want to be a writer.
Did your military experience influence your thinking about war or about the military in general?
No, I've always been pro-military. Um, there should be a separation between government and military, and the military should be there to support the people, not the government. And so long as the government is backed by the people, then the military should work in consort with that. I did begin to feel more strongly that once the government sent the military to war, the government should mind its own business and do its little taking care of business in the States and supporting the war with like money and fundraising and stuff, but they should not get involved in foreign policy when it's around that theater. I just think they mess things up.
How did your service and experiences affect your life?
Positively. I'm definitely a better person for it.
How long do you plan on remaining in the reserves?
Only as long as my obligation. I thought about being full-time reserve, maybe being active, or continuing on with reservist. And I'm there if they need me. But if they don't need me, I would like to do a little bit of living for a while.
Should there be a large-scale war that the country enters, would you ever consider rejoining the military?
Yep, I don't think I'd hesitate. If we got into a large-scale war with like a China or a Russia, um, or a confederation of countries, then yeah, I would go back. I'd drop my schooling, I'd go back, and I'd fight.
Is there anything you would like to add that we have not covered in this interview?
No.
Thank you very much.